Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Ashley Thomas, and if you're new here and want to follow just a geek from Wales who loves to talk about film, TV and anything and everything geeky, then why not hit that subscribe button. So if you've seen my previous video, you would know that I was experimenting with a new setup, and that was green screen. I did it for that one particular video for The Lion King, my review of The Lion King. If you haven't checked that out, please do. But yeah, I sort of enjoyed playing around with it and, you know, utilizing it within my video, but green screen just didn't quite work for me, I felt, and for what I really wanted for the channel, but I wanted to try it out anyway. So enough rambling on from me, let's dive straight into the review. My review of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's directed by Andre Overdahl, I think that's how you pronounce his surname. He also directed the very good Troll Hunter. If you haven't seen Troll Hunter, please check it out. Very good movie. So Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is about a group of teens who stumble upon an old book deep inside an abandoned mansion. And through this book, they awaken the monsters from within the tales, which were written by a Sarah Bellows, a young girl who had lived a life of torture. So I didn't realise this until afterwards, but this film is based on a series of books, children's books of the same name by an Alvin Schwartz, and I've never read those books, so I can't compare those to this film. What I do know is produced by Guillermo del Toro. I'm a big fan of del Toro, and he also wrote the screen story for this movie. So the one aspect that I really liked, that I really dug about this movie, were the horror elements, the horror moments within this film. I thought they were actually quite well done. They were very well crafted. And in those moments, you know, they did give me chills, and they did a good job at creating a really creepy and eerie atmosphere within those moments. For me, this is when the movie was at its best. It's when the movie worked the best. You know, when you get those horror moments, like we've seen in the trailer. I think they showed way too much of the trailers, actually. But as those stories start to write themselves and they become reality, you know, the stories come to life. I really enjoyed those moments. I thought they were a lot of fun. They were creepy, and I just thought they were well done. And within those moments, they managed to achieve tension, suspense. They were incredibly intense and suspense, some of these scenes. And I just liked how they were shot as well, and some of the camera angles they chose to use. For example, this is one scene, one moment where a character is under the bed, and they choose to shoot a brief moment of this scene through first person. And I just really liked that. I really appreciated the way these scenes were shot and crafted, because they really helped immerse you into the horror, and it helped amplify the horror as well. I also really dug the creature design within this movie. You know, the design of the monsters, I really liked them. It's almost as if they came straight from a del Toro movie, some of them. They were creepy, and I really liked the way in which they were utilized within the moments in which they were involved. So one of the issues I had with this movie, and there are a few issues with this movie, and that's tone. I really didn't know what they were aiming for when it came to tone and the humor within this movie, because there is this humor within the movie, but it doesn't quite meld right with the film overall. It didn't quite work for me. Like, for example, you get this one particular scene, one of the stories that come to life, in fact, and you're introduced to one of the creatures, the jangly man. And it starts off quite creepy and suspenseful. I really liked it. But then you sort of introduced to this monster, and it has that sort of comedic tone to it. It has humor to it. And it just threw me out a little bit, because it didn't quite fit with the rest of the movie and with the moment. And so, yeah, when it came to tone, I thought the tone was very uneven within this film. And I just did not know what they were aiming for. And that, along with the CGI, because you do also get there's quite a bit of CGI in this movie, but they also use practical effects, which I really appreciated. But by having that use of practical effects, sort of really allowed the CGI to stand out. And it's sort of, the CGI isn't that great. It was sort of, I thought it was quite poor, and it looked cartoony at times. So when you've got a mix of practical effects, which I love, but then CGI, which is obviously CGI, and humor that doesn't quite fit into the moment, for me it just really took me out of the film. But yeah, I really love the use of practical effects in this movie. There are some sort of, you know, when you see the creatures, they are there existing on set. You can see that, and I really appreciated that, because it really helps immerse you into the story and the horror and, you know, into this world. But then there would be moments where you would have CGI, like one of these really well crafted horror moments. These scenes may end with a sort of an overuse of CGI, I felt, and the CGI for me just didn't quite work. There was also an overuse of jump scares within this movie, so jump scares that required either loud music or, a loud noise, and it got tiresome. I really hate those kind of jump scares. I hate it when they use music as well as a jump scare to make you jump like that. I really hate it. So this movie is rated a 15. I believe in America that's R, rated R. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's what it would be in America though. But I really failed to see how this movie was rated 15. It really wasn't that intense as far as the violence goes. And for me that was a disappointment because I was expecting something a little bit more hard-edged, like more of a hard-edged horror movie with more blood, gore, and just being more adult. I don't know why, but I think that was just the impression I had from the trailers and what rating it came with. I was just expecting something a little bit more intense and adult, but that doesn't take away from how well the horror is within this movie, because when you get those moments, when you get those scary stories that come to life, they're really well done. They really are, they are creepy, they are eerie, but it doesn't warrant. I don't think this movie warranted that 15 or rated R certificate. It was very sort of light in how extreme the horror went. I just expected the horror just to be a little bit more hard-edged. So let me just reiterate, the horror moments we did have in this moment, when these scary stories come to life, they were well done. They were well crafted. But when it comes to how far they went and pushed the horror within this movie, how adult they were, well, this just felt like a 12A movie. Maybe that's just me, I don't know, let me know below. But it would not have bothered me so much if I'd went in expecting that level of horror, with a 12A slapped on it. But with a 15, I just expected more intensity. Maybe that's just me. I could just not really see what made this movie a 15. But like I said, that does not take away from how well the horror was crafted within this movie. For me, it felt like a teen adult version of a Goosebumps film. Based off the TV show. From what I can remember of the TV show when I was a kid, when I used to watch it. That's what how this film felt for me when it came to the horror, and I mean that in a good way, in the best way possible. So the acting overall from the teenagers was actually pretty okay for the most part. The standout for me was an Austin Zazou, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, apologies if it's incorrect. He plays a Charlie Steinberg, or they call him Chuck within the movie. I thought he was really good, and his performance stood out as being the most natural, as in he sold the fear and the horror, but was also able to sell the humour in those moments and make the humour feel natural and organic, unlike the movie overall, which failed in this. As I previously mentioned, tonally this movie is a little uneven. So the biggest issue I had with the movie were all the moments in between these stories, when these stories come to life and you really get the horror. It's the character moments within these, in between these scenes, which I thought was the weakest part of the movie, really. The dialogue, for example, was a little hammy and wooden in places. And I don't think they did enough to really set up or develop some of the main characters, mainly Zoe Colletti as a Stella. They don't develop deep enough into her character or her family's past, I felt, and the attempt we did have of this was brushed over and it just felt very shallow, and as a result I didn't care so much for this character's story, her journey throughout the movie, which is unfortunate, as I could see that's what they were trying to do with this particular character, and she was essentially the heart of this movie, you could say. I thought the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie was set up quite nicely, actually, where you're first introduced to the characters and the settings, but fails to continue any sort of consistent development when it comes to the characters. They do achieve that sort of autumn, Halloween atmosphere vibe quite nicely with the use of colours, lighting and cinematography. They capture that feel quite well, and they do help transport you into the moment. But when it comes to character development and how these characters were brought to life, I just thought was a little weak. Going back to the horror, the horror is the best part about this movie, actually, when it comes to these scary stories. But it reminded me a lot of how Spielberg does horror, as in I could just imagine my 10-year-old self, or even younger, or a little bit older maybe, but watching this movie and being scared out of my life. And it's only, you know, it could have only been a 12A. Like, for me personally, this felt more like a 12A movie, but it has, the horror is so well done. It just reminded me a little bit of how Spielberg does horror. You know, it's horror that will scare the life out of young kids and young teens, but will also, you know, adults would appreciate as well. So yeah, when it comes to the horror aspect of this movie, I just thought it was nice. It reminded me a lot of how Spielberg does horror movies, and it's sort of, I can imagine my sort of between the age of 5 and 10 watching this movie, and afterwards I would be afraid to go to bed. I'd be afraid of what's under the bed, and I like that. I love the idea behind the story of having these scary stories come to life, and you get one for each character. I really like that idea. It just sort of reminded me of these old 80s horror anthology movies as well. And I thought this was a really good idea, but overall just wasn't quite executed as well as I would have liked. Maybe, you know, it's the meeting between these horror elements that let the overall movie down, I felt, for me. And the climax in this movie was a very big letdown for myself. Very anticlimactic. And that was mainly down to how I felt about its main character, and this goes back to the poor character development really, and how the scene played out, how the climax played out. I felt like it was very flat and felt almost tacked on, like a last minute idea, and it lacked any emotion, which I felt like the scene really needed. And again, it goes back to character development. I just did not care enough for the character for this scene, this particular scene that obviously required some sort of emotional punch and impact, just failed to deliver. It failed to have any sort of impact on me because I didn't really care that much for the characters. And for me, what didn't quite work was, you've got this main story, so you've got the story behind why this book exists, why these stories exist, involving the character Sarah Bellows, and then you've got the story within sort of present time and when these stories come to life. And for me, that did not quite work as well as I think it could have. It's almost as if they didn't know what focus or what part of the story to focus on the most, or get the right balance of. So overall, I actually enjoyed this movie for the most part. You know, the ending, the climax was a letdown. It has poor, shallow character development, and you know, not a great screenplay. The dialogue isn't particularly that great, but with a handful of well-crafted horror moments, for me being the highlights within this film. For me, I felt Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was an enjoyable experience, but not one without a few flaws in its storytelling and its characters. I will be giving Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark a 6 out of 10. And that's my review of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. What did you guys think? Please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. My next review will be for It Chapter 2. I'm looking forward to bringing you that. My thoughts on Chapter 2. I really enjoyed it. Again, like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it's not one without its flaws either. My next video will be, and this is a very late video like my Lion King review, and it's going to be my favourite movies of the year so far. Probably wondering now, wow, you are late, because before long I'll be doing my top 10 of the year. But it is a video that I planned on doing a few months ago, and I just didn't get around to it, but I still want to do it. So basically every movie I've seen up until June, which is not a lot, but I'm going to, it's only 3 films. I'm going to do my top 3 favourite films of the year so far, and so I really wanted to get that out there basically on my channel. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. And remember, if you want to follow just a geek from Wales who loves to talk about film, TV and everything and anything geeky, then why not hit subscribe?